Good evening. Welcome to the Shakti Report. My name is Sherston, and I'm excited to be learning with everyone. I think this is just a really exciting time to learn a lot about our roots and where we came from, and um, and examine that through a modern lens and where we want to go. So, free speech is on the table for dinner for our minds and hearts this evening. Happy Friday. I hope you enjoyed a lovely day wherever you are. It was wonderful here in Portland. Started out all rainy and then got beautiful and sunny, and just had one of those great days. This stranger gave me a spaghetti squash out of the back of his pickup truck, and also the guy working at the gas station, and yeah, a couple other kind of serendipitous nice things. So, feeling very blessed and feeling very optimistic about where we're headed as a humanity. But I do think we have a lot of work to do. So let's get started. I want to start off with just a quick review of what the freedom of speech is. And I mean, this is horrible for me to say, but I'm going to be brutally honest with you guys. It's like completely embarrassing, um, because not just because I talk about political stuff and you know um, you should know things like this type of thing, but also because I have a political science minor, so I definitely knew this at one point, and it's just amazing how that was only like 10 years ago ish. And it's just amazing. Exactly, actually. I graduated 10 years ago, I think. No, more than that. Anyhow, aside from the point. But yeah, so the freedom of speech is actually the First Amendment. And I thought it was the second, but now, I'm recalling the second is the right to bear arms. But yeah, I'm just, it's horrible that I didn't know that, because I actually went and saw it was the First Amendment. I was like, is this a, false thing? And went and looked it up more, and I was like, nope, I just didn't know that. So if you didn't know that, don't feel bad, because I didn't know that, and I shouldn't really know that. So it's the First Amendment, and I'm just going to read it here. It's very beautiful. Um, The First Amendment to the United States Constitution prevents Congress from making any law respecting an establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise of religion, or abridging the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the right to peaceable assembly, or to petition for a governmental redress of grievances. So this is important for those of you who have been following my channel, and I think this was on Facebook back before this channel, but I covered extensively, and if you don't know about this, please go do a little research. It's easy to look up. Um, we covered the fact that people were being arrested at like Standing Rock, where they were on the Sioux tribe land, their own land, and they were peaceably assembling. There was no violence, unlike the rest of the protests that are happening across our country, which we'll get to, um, or a lot of the protests, not the rest, hopefully. But so we went over why they could be arrested, and basically Obama passed a law, or actually did an edit to a law that made it very different. So we talked about that. It's a 1964 law that I believe Nixon implemented. And basically it said that you weren't allowed to protest or voice dissent anywhere where the president was. So that was a big deal because before that, if it did exist, it was limited to like the White House, maybe, but I don't think it even existed before 1964. However, it was a big deal because that meant that if somebody were to stand in front of the president and say, hey, I don't think you're doing a good job, I don't think what you're doing right here is right, that would technically be a violation and they could be arrested, right? So that was a big deal. Now, Obama took that and he took it a way big deal step further, to the point that you could not protest or express dissent anywhere where the Secret Service is, even if you don't know they're there. And also that included in this stipulation, it includes all like governmental, and I'm unclear about this part, so when you go do your research, maybe you can clarify and put in the comments, but governmental public buildings. So for some reason sports stadiums and stuff are included in that. So essentially you can't express dissent about the American government or protest anything at, any sporting events. So that's something, everybody should know. Like the laws have changed. We don't have rights. So when we see certain groups getting to express their dissent, we can automatically know that that is controlled dissent. That's dissent that is approved of, that is backed and funded by people like George Soros and the alt left, and yeah, and it's dangerous because it's essentially it's not doing anything. It's decapitating, it's co-opting, it's stopping any kind of progress or standing for anything. There's nothing being demanded, essentially. So the First Amendment says that we are supposed to be able to petition for governmental redress of grievances through peaceable assembly. This is Amendment 1. This is what our forefathers, who broke away from the same tyranny that we are now finding ourselves under today, are old people, if you have any white in you, that came over here essentially and broke away from colonialism. The reason they made this the First Amendment was because it was the most important to a free society. And if I'm wrong about that, historians watching, please, I'll get back to you in the comments on that, and respond. But this was the most important piece of the puzzle that really needed to secure, and that's why the amendments are the part that's supposed to live and breathe, but they're not, you can't, it was supposed to be so that nobody could penetrate this, especially First Amendment. I think it's the first certain number of amendments, and I can't remember how many, and maybe I'll do just a Constitution video so that we can all learn this. But very important, right? That's the point. So let's move on. Actually, let me read a little bit more here, what it says, and I'll just show you. I'm just right on the Wikipedia site. The bill was originally proposed to assuage anti-federalist opposition to constitutional ratification. Initially, the First Amendment applied only to laws enacted by the Congress, and many of its provisions were interpreted more narrowly than they are today. I don't know about that. We're going to get into hate speech and whatnot later. In Everson versus Board of Education in 1947, the court drew on Thomas Jefferson's correspondence to call for a wall of separation between church and state. Though the precise boundary of this separation remains in dispute, speech rights were expanded significantly in a series of 20th and 21st century court decisions, which protected various forms of political speech, anonymous speech, campaign financing, pornography, and school speech. These rulings also defined a series of exceptions to First Amendment protections. The Supreme Court overturned English common law precedent to increase the burden of proof for defamation and libel suits, most notably in the New York Times versus Sullivan 1964. Commercial speech, however, is less protected by the First Amendment than political speech and is therefore subject to regulation. Okay, so they're saying like when we're regulating what people are saying on TV and whatnot is supposed to be I think that's what it means, commercial speech, and like what's on commercials, what words are allowed to be said and whatnot, which is so the least of our problems now. The Free Press Clause protects information and opinions. All right, so all that false news stuff is a way to get rid of this. The Free Press Clause protects publication of information and opinions and applies to a wide variety of media. In Neer versus Minnesota 1931 and New York Times versus United States 1971, the Supreme Court ruled that the First Amendment protected against prior restraint pre-publication censorship in almost all cases. The Petition Clause protects the right to petition all branches and agencies of government for action. In addition to the right of assembly guaranteed by this clause, the court has also ruled that the amendment implicitly protects freedom of association. Okay, so sounds like great stuff, right? I mean, why would we want to get rid of that? So I want to read an article, and I'm reading this because it's a very well written article. This is what's going on in South Africa right now. It's already happened in our country. New York passed the hate speech bill, I believe, in 2005, but it's South Africa through their version of that. So, the hate speech bill is unconstitutional and can't be saved. The Promotion and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech bill is currently under public comment and, if passed, will become the most significant piece of legislation to limit freedom of expression since the days of riotous assemblies of 1956. When Dr. Samuel Johnson completed the first real English dictionary in 1755, he was met outside London home by two prudish ladies of high society. The ladies thanked him for omitting indelicate and objectionable words from his dictionary, to which Dr. Johnson is reported to have replied, "What, my dears, have you been looking for them?" The Promotion and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech bill is currently under public comment and, if passed, will become the most significant piece of legislation to limit freedom of expression since the days of riotous Assembly Acts of 1956. The government believes that this legislation is necessary in order to promote social cohesion and the prevalence of racist, sexist, and homophobic thought, among others, will disappear under the threat of criminal sanction. Okay, so I'm just going to say real quick, those of you who haven't read 1984 yet, please go to the used bookstore, go on, some used book thing online and get one, because you have to read it to help understand, like, that's why people can see this stuff easier because of the predictions made in that book. So right now they're saying that if they regulate and make this hate speech illegal, that the crimes will stop, and they're even saying sexist and homophobic thought will stop. And in 1984, it turns into the thought police, and it literally turns into like you are and are not allowed to think certain things. Okay, so the bill in its current state is unconstitutional, and even with amendments, it is unlikely to be saved from this fate. It alters the constitutional framework for hate speech, which requires both the advocacy of hatred and an incitement to cause harm on the basis of race, gender, ethnicity, and religion. The bill no longer requires the advocacy of hatred, nor does it require the incitement to cause harm. Simple offense, ridicule, insult, threatening remarks now fall within the parameters of hate speech. Parliament does not have the power to change the unconstitutional scheme of a provision through simple legislation. The negotiating history of the hate speech clause was achieved by political compromise and back and forth between the African National Congress and the Democratic Party. The late Dean Smuts, a champion of free speech and DP's negotiator, fervently opposed the hate speech clause. She lost this battle, and a compromise was reached with ANC to require the indictment to cause harm on the four listed grounds. Not only would the bill do away with this, an effective amendment to the constitutional clause, but it also establishes 13 new categories against whom hate speech may be committed. The Constitutional Court has previously declared in a 2002 hate speech decision that extending the categories beyond those mentioned in the Constitution is unconstitutional. But still, perhaps the most striking thing about the bill is the reach that it has. It does not draw a distinction between private and public communication. Indeed, it expressly considers communication to be without limitation. The effect of this is that no audience is required to hear the speech in order for it to become hate speech. The short-term benefit of reporting that bigoted relative who visits for dinner, perhaps more than you would like, and the imposition of a 3-year term of imprisonment may seem appealing, but the effect of this on the constitutional scheme would be disastrous for open and free debate in our society, not to mention the effect on comedians, cartoonists, satirists, and a free and independent media. This is South Africa. They still have one. The cartoonist who draws, they haven't gotten the fake news memo yet. We should send it to him. Yeah, good luck with your independent media. The cartoonist who draws a picture of a powerful politician sexually assaulting Lady Justice, or the artist who paints the president in the nude, will find themselves captured by Section 4 of the hate speech bill. You may even find your local priest in need of tithings to pay the fine imposed for preaching the tenets of Leviticus if the government is unrepentant about the bill becoming law. Sure, courts will balance the freedom of artistic creativity against the hate speech clause in the hate speech bill, but experience has shown that courts have often been unbalanced when undertaking this inquiry. And more important, it should not have to undertake a balancing inquiry where a law would be inconsistent with the Constitution. Our courts and commissions have also sought to limit speech where it is offensive to sections of society or where it is marginalizes minority groups, and has declared that certain speech be banned. The lamentable decision of Judge Colin Lamont on the signing of Dubula Ibunu, Shoot the Boer, is an example of this. He banned the song on the grounds that a reasonable person hearing it would consider it hate speech as it advocates hatred towards Afrikaners, that's again in South Africa, and could reasonably be seen as an incitement to cause harm. This decision was based on a reasonable Afrikaner, not a reasonable South African, imbued with the values of our Constitution and appreciative of freedom of expression, the context in which it occurs, open debate, critical discussion, and disagreement. He also assumes that all Afrikaans persons are bound to feel the same way, where they could equally be indifferent to the speech or even find it amusing in the context in which it was sung. Immediately after the decision, the ANC Youth League, in defiance, sang the song outside the Johannesburg High Court. Criminalizing hate speech in order to achieve social cohesion makes the same mistake as Judge Lamont. It assumes that a proscription. I think maybe that's supposed to be prescription. Prescription results in, I don't know that word, apologies. Prescription results in the extirpation of racist, sexist, and homophobic speech. Yeah, South Africa, way to use the English language. I will be going to the dictionary later. Thank you. Among others, and that society will no longer harbor these thoughts because they are not in the public space. A law that does this would be self-defeating. Those prosecuted for hate speech would invariably gain the attention of the media and will, in any event, give that speech a public platform when they are put on trial. Yes, we make movie stars out of our criminals. It is conceivable that those sympathetic to the speech may even feel more aggrieved by what they would consider an unjust prosecution. All of this does not suggest that there should never be any reprisal for hate speech. There should, but our Constitution perceptively determines when this should occur to protect freedom and remove speech that advocates hatred and incites harm on the basis of race, gender, ethnicity, and religion, contextually understanding the circumstances in which the speech occurs. South Africans have a fantastic record of lambasting those who publicly spew racism and other forms of bigotry, having the unique effect of bringing about medical conditions in these bigots. Ooh, okay, well maybe I take back the thumbs up. This, in my view, achieves far more for society than a criminal prohibition. Yeah, I guess. We ought not to operate under the illusion that unity is built by pretending that division does not exist. I have to read that again. We ought not to operate, we ought not to operate under the illusion that unity is built by pretending that division does not exist. Oh, so good. Take care of one thing. Hold on one second, guys. Okay, my neighbor's dropping off pie. That's so sweet. Okay, so you get the picture here, and oh, there she is. So you get the picture here. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech. You know, like we either have it or we don't. There's always going to be people saying hateful things, but that's not how we overcome it. We don't make people not think things. Shoot. I'm going to have to be right back. Sorry, guys. 1 second. Oh, a little fairy just delivered me a piece of homemade pumpkin pie. We carved pumpkins together. She's so cute. She's my little Gemini neighbor. That was so sweet. I just get my mom real quick. Oh, that was so sweet. Okay, I apologize for the interruption. It just seems like, nobody ever comes by. But how can you complain? I mean, oh my gosh, I got pie. Okay, yeah, you want to check that out? I mean, that's like, oh, yeah. I know you're feeling a little jelly now. Okay, so that's the freedom of speech stuff. Now, let's talk about what's going on a little bit right now. First of all, let's take a couple deep breaths. Freedom of speech, what a cool thing, Like, we don't think about, like, these rights that we've grown up with that, didn't just appear out of nowhere. Um, yeah, it's amazing. So let's pay some homage and continue the exploration. I want to introduce this woman and basically start to expand our minds a little bit because there's been a lot of division created through supposed equality movements. And I'll let this amazing woman take it from there.
I'm noticing. I mean, I everywhere I go to speak, whether it's England, Italy, Brazil, where I've gone a number of times, and so on. The upper middle class professional women are very unhappy. They're very unhappy. They may have power, they may have a nice lifestyle, and so on, but the misery quotient is high. Okay, and what I'm saying, okay, as a feminist, is that the women have to stop blaming men for their sense of malaise or misery. Okay, it's not men. There's been a cultural change. An enormous change has happened. Right, for the first time in history, men and women are working side by side in an environment. So men and women are having more contact with each other than they ever did. Okay, there used to be in the agrarian era for all those tens of thousands of years the world of men and the world of women. And those two worlds didn't come together that often. So I can still remember it, okay, in that end of the agrarian era that I experienced in childhood. Okay, the women had their own world. They ruled the private sphere, right? All day, it was multi-generational. Okay? There was a solidarity that women had. They were in charge of a tremendous amount of life. And when the man would come over to my grandmother's house, my grandfather would be sitting there. They would be drinking. I could smell the coffee with the anisette. They would put alongside of it, the smoking, etc. And the men, we would have the men. Okay, and then the women had their own thing. Okay, so I think that what women are feeling right now is a sense of displacement. Okay, and loneliness. Okay. Because it's the collapse of the extended family, okay, the multi-generational family, into this nuclear family. It could be that this nuclear family thing is toxic. Okay, all right. This thing of like a man, husband and a wife and children in a home in a nice house. It could be like a horrible prison. It could be like a crucible for Freudian neurosis. Okay, and so on. Okay, never in history, never in history. Okay, have you had this entrapment of the children with the parents? Okay, the parents are now now they're responsible for everything. Okay.
I never thought about that, but it's so true. It's like that's why they always used to say it takes a village to raise a child, but we say that, but we don't even think about that, what it really meant, that it really, we've lost that. I like this point.
And then the richer, the wealthier, okay, the more affluence, a wife and so on, with children, okay, the less likely she is going to be able to rely on neighbors, okay, to like pitch in for her Okay, like can you imagine like something like Scarsdale, the wife or whatever. Okay, something comes up. Okay, she needs to run somewhere to do something. To say to her neighbor, okay, can you watch the kids for for a couple of hours? Oh sure. Okay, that's really going to happen. Okay, sometimes you hardly know the neighbors. Okay, right. So oddly enough, many working class neighborhoods, you have much more of an integration there and a familiarity because on the whole, working class people don't move, okay, as much. Okay, they often grow up in neighborhoods where they grew up. They know everybody, etc. Right, and it's a feature even in South Philadelphia to this day. In those row houses in South Philadelphia, the Italian section, and so on, people sit on the stoop. Okay, they watch everything that goes by. Okay, they're monitoring the way kids behave in the street. Okay, there was a whole village quality. In the old village life, there was a sense of community and a sense of belonging, a sense of identity. And now today, people have to struggle. Young people have to struggle for an identity. Okay, have to struggle. Okay, everyone feels very displaced. Right. Another thing, okay, is that the higher up you go in terms of affluence, the less likely it is that you on vacations that you'll be vacationing with your relatives. Okay, right? You know what I'm saying? In other words, people are flying to St. Bart's, are not taking their parents. Okay, they're not taking all the cousins and so on. Right? But when I go to just to I drive an hour, go to the New Jersey shore, okay, where working class families go in the wildwoods and so on, you see multi generational vacationing. Okay, all the generations. You see the children running around, you see the parents, and you see the old people. They're sitting there in their chairs, like this and so on. The water's lapping their feet, and so on. I'm going, this is amazing. This is a capsule, okay, of what life used to be like. That contact among all the generations. Okay, and the same thing in Philadelphia, the parks, like Fairmount Park and so on. On any Sunday, any weekend, you go there, and it's working class families who are taking over the park benches, in the barbecue pits, and are spending the whole day there, multi generations all together, free, okay, to go to the park, okay, right? So that's why you're getting more and more neurosis the higher up you go in terms of affluence, okay. That's why you have some of the most privileged young people, in our society, getting into the elite schools and having to take antidepressants and throwing themselves out of windows and everything else, okay? Because mere material affluence isn't enough, okay? For identity. So actually, the stronger personalities seem to be coming from working class culture, because they have a sense of their own, place in the universe. Okay? They aren't being shipped around every place. All right. So I think there's a lot of psychological ills in the culture, but I'm calling for a moratorium on this anti-male stuff. Okay. All right. Feminism has gotten very contaminated with anti-male rhetoric. It's completely unnecessary. Okay. All the problems in the world are not due to men. Okay. A lot of problems are due to the systemic change that happened.
Well, I will say that we as a people collectively have gotten to where we are. And although men made the decisions and whatnot until a very short time ago, the women went along with it. If we look back at like colonialism and when racism was like in style, because it hasn't ended, and it never did. And I really woke up to that when I went to college. I was lucky enough to first go to a dorm that was mostly minorities, and then later I lived in a part of Brooklyn, a couple different parts of Brooklyn that were. One was a Puerto Rican neighborhood, and another was a West Indian neighborhood, and that really opened my eyes to a lot, and I got exposed to books and information and stories, and but before that, growing up as a middle class white girl, I really thought racism was kind of dead, and this and that. And now as I mature, I'm realizing that a lot of the things that the left has co-opted along the way, one of them being like Black Lives Matter movement, which is still got real people, especially I think in the Chicago, and I think that's might be where it started, but I'm not sure. But in certain areas, it's still real, but the they've debilitated it a lot, and the people you'll see on the mainstream media saying, they're from Black Lives Matter and whatnot, they're part of the co-opting. They don't really have an agenda, demands, etc. So I got to do a whole nother video on co-opting and what that looks like and how you can tell. I will link at the end in the resources that'll go up after this video ends. You can find a short video I did about an example of recognizing co-opting, and yeah, you'll see that in the resources after this is over. So that's Camille Paglia, and I think she makes a lot of good points. And before we move on, I just want to make the point that it's people like her and thoughts like hers that are, supposedly causing these university riots. Now, whoever's doing the rioting is causing the riot. These people aren't going there like, hey, I'm gonna have a white nationalism rally. No, like that's not what these people are about. And now I just showed you one that is a little easier to digest and stuff, but there are others that I completely disagree with, and like they make me want to vomit too. But it doesn't matter. Like, they have the right to stand on a stage and speak. If I want to protest, like, I'm going to try to educate people on why their thoughts are, not serving the, whatever it is. I'm going to actually form an idea about why this person's thoughts, or the way they're moving, or policies, or what they're preaching, whatever, is not good in my view, and have a conversation about that. Like, we've grown up in this culture that's so living in the limbic brain and left brain, and so into identities and labels, because, like this woman was saying, we don't have real identity. We don't have a real American culture. We have a consumerism culture. And so as we reach back to our roots, it's like messy and it kind of hurts, but yet there's these beautiful things like the freedom of speech, which we can find, inspiration in protecting and knowing. I feel like just more connected to the people who fought for these freedoms. Granted, they weren't perfect, and granted, we have made freedom more free since then, in all reality. For all our flaws right now and how we're oppressing the world, here at home, I did grow up with equal opportunity as a woman, to do whatever it is. But this woman makes, great points that now there's this stress on women to keep up. There's this whole new civilization life that is so foreign to us as pack animals. And that's, I think, why we're reaching so hard for community and, ideas that do help us form cohesion. And that's the thing, is like they're saying, they have hate speech illegal so that they can form a more cohesive country. But you don't make things more cohesive by banning stuff. You make things more cohesive by having the freedom of speech talk, by letting everybody say what they want to say, so that we can get to everybody's gripes, so that we can throw all the ideas in the mixing pot. And that was the idea of democracy, was that everybody has a voice. So now we're going to say you only have a voice if you're a liberal or if you're a Democrat. Like, that's kind of completely crazy, and it's nuts because, and we're going to move on to this in a second, but this group Antifa, which I'm sure people have heard about, Antifa means anti-fascist, and they're like causing these riots and making them violent and dressing up in masks and everything, and they're supposedly from the alt left, and it's just like crazy, and they're like going there and calling with tiki torches. They're the ones carrying the tiki torches, you know, the alt left and the Antifa, not the alt right, which is what you would expect if these people are supposedly Nazis and causing the problem. So there's a big co-opting. There's, you know, and I need to do also another video on all the stuff that's been going on with the FBI and CIA and just operations, psyops being used against the American people. And before I do that video, please do go look up how Obama made it legal to use psyops that we used to use overseas for regime change, i.e., Chile, Iraq, Iran, Libya, and we have soon to be about 5 on the list: Venezuela, Syria. You know, hopefully not. Hopefully miracles happen. This doesn't happen. Venezuela, Syria, um, Yemen, North Korea. So no matter what your political views, you know, us being the police of the world, teamed up with Saudi Arabia and Israel, is really getting obvious. And it is not our job to go around and bomb whoever we think we don't want ruling the country, or because they won't go on the US petrol dollar, or because they won't let us build a pipeline that we want to make billions of dollars off. It's ridiculous. It's like an out of control mafia. And taking our money, taxation without representation, hello, that's what the Boston Tea Party was about, and that's what founding this country was about. Well, they're doing it to us right now, taking our tax money and using it for war, for regime change, for our military, for killing people. It's just, you know, we've got to wake up to it, you know, because this isn't what our forefathers founded this country for. They didn't say, hey, we want to be the ones in charge. Now we want to exploit everyone. And I don't think most of the people that live in this country want that. That's why we have to open our eyes and not just listen to the rhetoric being spoken to us. So let's move on. I want to show you this young woman. If you didn't get a chance, you can watch my video, Late Night New Moon. I did it last night, and there's a meditation at the end. And I also talk a little bit about some current events that are mentioned here. So if you did watch that, this will be interesting for you too, and you can watch it later if not. But this young woman has really taken the bull by the horns, and I'll just leave it at that, and you'll see.
Harvey Weinstein, Eminem, plus a P. Diddy solution to NFL protesting. My name is Candace Owens, and you are watching my vlog series, The Myth of the Coon. Man, life comes at you fast, Hollywood. It's like 1 minute you're up there singing and tap dancing, mocking everyone from your moral high ground, and the next minute, bam! The world discovers that you've been covering up for a serial rapist. America voted for a misogynist, said every actor and actress everywhere just after they had got finished smooching up to Harvey Weinstein. We know, celebrities, this is different. If we've learned one thing from your undying support of Woody Allen and the Clintons, it's that rape is totally fine so long as it's financed by globalists.
Thank you, Hillary, for being a constant beacon of strength, hope, and determination for me and millions of other young women. You've been a role model and an inspiration and a voice of reason in uncertain times.
Sniffle. The point is that I was really hoping that Bill Clinton, a rapist, would be in the White House. You taught us that women can be raped so long as it's by your husband. This is me holding my breath for Stephen Colbert to pen a musical number on the horrible actions of Harvey Weinstein. Also holding my breath for a newly organized women's march with 2.0 pussy hat designs. Okay, can I at least get a Kimmel cry? Come on, Jimmy. You cried for Cecil the Lion. You can at least squeeze one out for Weinstein victims. Thanks, Jimbo. And speaking of men who disrespect women and are somehow celebrated in Hollywood, have you heard Eminem's new diss track? Personally, as a former fan, I was a little disappointed. After years of hearing about how you wanted to rape and kill your ex-wife and even your mom, calling Trump and Steve Bannon racist felt a little PG, like Eminem on a diet, sugar-free shady. In fact, the only people that should be offended by Eminem's diss track is CNN, because plagiarism is a no-no.
Racism, religions.
Racism, racist issue? Racist elements.
That's right, Em. We know where you got those lines. Next topic, Vegas. A horrible tragedy which resulted in the left demanding that we give up our right to bear arms. We need stricter regulations! Yeah, because that worked so well in Chicago. Fact number 1. Gun violence has significantly decreased over the last 15 years. Don't believe me? Try shutting off NBC and thinking plus researching for yourself. Fact number 2. Stop it! We hate facts! The NRA is the definition of gun regulations. Stop blaming them every time a mass shooting occurs. Not a single member of the NRA has ever committed a mass shooting in this country. I mean, blaming the NRA every time a shooting occurs would be as ridiculous as blaming Donald Trump every time a racist act occurs in this country. Oh, awkward. Fact number 3. Disallowing people the right to bear arms is just not smart. Okay, technically that's not a fact, it's an opinion. The point is that my personal opinion is that giving the government access to automatic weapons while the citizens do not hold the same right is not the most well thought out idea. And to you people that say it is, aren't you guys the same ones that have been calling our government rigged and set up and racist since November 8th of last year? Now you want those rigged and racist people to be the only ones holding weapons? How's that work? How's your brain work? Look, with everything that's gone on in the past week, there can be only one headline to rule them all. Yes, in case you guys missed it, Diddy, formerly Puffy, before that Puff Daddy, wins every single award this week. Diddy nay Puff Daddy tweeted that he had a dream that us, black people, would one day own our own league. And there we could drop to our knees and protest freely. It's too good. Oh, God. I mean, in the 1950s, Martin Luther King had a dream that we could all live together peacefully. It's now 2017, and black billionaires are dreaming about segregation. Please do it, Diddy. Please. If I don't live long enough to see self-imposed segregation, it all would have been for naught. Thanks for watching, guys. If you guys enjoy these videos, please consider donating to my patreon.com account. I'm pretty sure we are almost at 1,000 patrons, and I would love to break 1,000 before November. Help me out.
Whoop, whoop. So I don't agree with everything she says either. And guess what? She goes on a lot of shows of people who don't agree with her. And this is the freedom of speech. That's the point. And what is happening in the alt left is that like anything they don't agree with is immediately like hate speech or politically incorrect or racist or whatever. And the alt-right is making this point, and they're making other points that are correct, I think, too. But this is a big one. This is a big one that is like the Kool-Aid, man. It's the Kool-Aid. Like, once you see it, it's like, oh my God, yikes. Like, it is fascists calling themselves anti-fascists. Like, it's nuts. Anyway, continuing. Here we go. Little more. Oh, that's not it. Okay, so here is Ezra Levant. And, honestly, I'm not sure who he is, but I know that he is one of the people who have been causing, you know, uh, these uprisings. So I just want to show you a little bit from one of them, because the news makes it sound like people are uprising against some kind of Nazi meeting, or like, Nazis are coming to the school to preach like Nazism, but that's like not what's happening whatsoever. So let's take a look.
All right, so there are no in and out privileges. There are radical leftists outside, so so be careful. So our next guest is clearly someone many of you are familiar with, and who many outside these doors are familiar with. He is someone who time and time again has stood up to the media elites in this country, in particular the CBC, who are using your money to fund and spread Marxist propaganda. Well, we're not going to let them do that anymore, because now we have a voice in the media, a voice that's speaking on behalf of us, the Canadians who are elected officials, our bureaucrats, and the establishment mainstream media would rather silence and forget. Those days are done, and that is thanks to someone I'm proud to call boss, the rebel commander, Ezra Levant.
And this is in Canada, if you didn't hear that.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mac.
At a
Appreciate it.
university.
Thanks to Generation Screwed and the taxpayers for inviting me. I appreciate that. Lots of rebels here in the house. Give me a show of hands. Who's here? Right on. Well, it's great to see a lot of rebels here. And students supporting free speech. Who's part of that organization? Outstanding, outstanding. I want to let you know that when we covered one of the students supporting for free speech protests at U of T, where Professor Peterson was there, I was so deeply impressed by not just the articulate exposition of the reasons for free speech, but the courage to lean into the hurricane when it would be so easy to lean back or not even to show up. In fact, that very protest is where we found one of our newest stars, Jay Fiza. I just saw, who is that guy standing up against the hurricane? I got to meet that fella. Now he's working for us. I want to tell you, we're growing like crazy at the Rebel, and I would like to hire more people from students supporting free speech at the Rebel, because I already know all I need to know about you. You believe in freedom, you believe in the right to debate an issue, and if you can be for freedom at the academy with that kind of abuse, I already know you've got courage. So I know some of you just from watching you through our videos and on Facebook, but I would love to have more students supporting free speech working at the Rebel. You're doing good work on campus, but imagine if you could get on video and have 10,000, 100,000.
Let's all go look up the Rebel. Sounds like independent media.
250,000 people, and some of Jay's videos have had more than 100,000 views. So come work with us. We can talk about how to do that later. The people outside, if you ask them, would say they're against fascism. They would say they're against Nazism. And if you ask them to define that, they would sort of stumble. And I think they define it, and there's this movement on right now to punch a fascist in the face, punch a Nazi. And that's sort of funny, because they're here in part because I'm here. And I'm actually a Jew. If you didn't pick that up, from Ezra Isaac Levant. And they want to punch me in the nose, and we're here having a conversation, and you can agree or disagree, and there's some questions, and you can do whatever. So here we got a meeting at a university, a house of learning, There's a diverse array of people here. Students, I'm a Jew who wants to talk about things, and you got people dressed in black with flags of anarchy, wearing handkerchiefs to cover their identity, trying to bust down those doors to do me harm,
and this is very suspicious that this is going on in Canada and in our country. You know, I don't think all these students have really organized and cared enough that they themselves went and organized this. I mean, Antifa is so clearly coming from George Soros and those people. I don't know that for a fact, but it's clear they have a big benefactor with a big agenda.
They're calling themselves anti-fascists?
I mean, they're at all of these university things with the whole get-up and tiki torches. I mean, come on. It's so ridiculous.
I think they call fascists. I think it's anyone they want to punch. It's not that they find a Nazi and want to punch him. It's they find someone they want to punch and call them a Nazi.
Yep.
Because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But there's a...
That's what happened to Harvey Weinstein. They decided he had to go down. Suddenly he's a rapist. He's been a rapist for 30 years, and all those same people have been protecting him for 30 years.
Going on right now, because those people outside, now I believe they are paid protesters, professional protesters, and I don't say this...
And if Harvey were not trying to be taken down, all those people would smear the person trying to claim rape on him. They do whatever the hell they want.
Some insult or aspersion. I actually know some of them from covering protests around Toronto and other cities. I mean, I'll just pick one name. I saw Bailey Lamont out there. I first met Bailey in Hamilton when she was protesting against an oil pipeline. I mean, Bailey goes around and is a professional protester. I mean, you go to one protest and you meet all these interesting characters, and then you go to a completely different protest. You go to Occupy Wall Street, you go to Idle No More, you go to Black Lives Matter, which is mostly white in Toronto. I went to an Idle No More protest. It was about 100 people, and there were only about 3 Aboriginal. Well, there's a shock. There's a complete shock. You know what? Given that they are fascist outside, I think that they want to burn the place down. But I'm going to make the guess that that's a false alarm designed to stop the speech. And unless I'm instructed by a fire marshal to leave, I'm going to keep on talking. I mean, when was the last time you were in a group of people that thought pulling the fire alarm to get out of a test was cool? Is that like grade 4? That's where these folks are, these anti-fascists. You know, there's a mania out there. I don't know if those of you who are rebels probably saw the video. It's been watched more than 1.3 million times. We sent our Alberta Bureau Chief, Sheila Gunn-Reid, to cover the Women's March in Edmonton. And Sheila, as you may know, is a woman, and she went to report it. And she very calmly was reporting from the march, and someone realized that she was with the rebel. Hey, boss.
Sorry for bothering you.
Yeah, hi.
Staff Sergeant Cascanet.
Nice to meet you.
We have an active fire alarm, so we have to clear the building.
Let's just take note, guys. They are having the tamest freaking conversation at the 17, Toronto Action Forum at a university with press there and everything. Like, it is just like he said, it's high school. It's completely ridiculous and disrespectful and disgusting. I will, this video will be in the resources, so you can watch the rest of that. He pretty much takes it to the street and finishes talking and stuff and has some good things to say. Again, I don't agree with everything he says, but this is that's why we have freedom of speech. That's why we all are supposed to have an equal voice, is so that we can get to a place as a people where we're considering everyone's needs as well as our community's wants, you know? When we live in an area, let's take Colorado, where you can't ban fracking in a county, you can't ban fracking in a city, because the state says, no, we're going to sue you if you do. You know, that is not democratic at all. The people should be able to choose, especially when it's their money that builds the pipeline and the fracking well and all of that. Their tax dollars go into that, and they have to upkeep and maintain the roads and everything that these huge trucks are driving on. And you know, it's just like ridiculous. It's like there's socialism for the corporation and the oil company. Like, their needs are met. Our tax dollars are taken to maintain their billion-dollar revenue source. But when it comes to like the actual tax dollars that are being taken from us, being put back into our education and our society's needs, that's socialism. Excuse me, this is mafiosoism, okay? Like, you're taking our money, they're making billions of dollars, they're exporting all our gas, like, the government and the corporation are completely in bed, you know? It's like, it's absolutely ridiculous how obvious it is. So, this is, you know, Ezra Levant, so you can look him up. Here's someone who, you know, I don't even think I'm going to go into him, but I'll let you guys look him up if you want, but I'll talk a little bit about what happened recently. Excuse me. This guy, Richard Spencer, now he is very difficult for me to digest, to say the least. Right now, I'm digesting the pie. It was so good. Oh, thank you, Zuma and Adrian. So, Richard Spencer, he was the one at Charlottesville. I don't know if there were multiple speakers or if it was just him. He's also the person who coined the term alt-right. And you know what? I misspoke this evening because I actually don't know if that girl who I first showed you, Red Pill Black, if she actually considers herself alt-right. And I need to get clearer on my stuff, because basically what's happened in our society, if you haven't like actually, you know, been like, ooh, what is that? Basically everyone just calls everything that's Republican these days like alt-right. And nobody really knows what that means. So I don't know if she really considers herself that. This dude coined the phrase alt-right, and he is something. I will say he's very hard for me to take, and yeah, I can see why he's an easy target for people. I don't think that he's a Nazi or anything like that, like, at all. I mean, I think that he's just like a middle-class dude who grew up in the suburbs and is a bit confused and angry, and he's almost like wants reparations, it seems, for land that we stole, which he admits. So he's kind of like too all over the place for me. Like, you know, if you take a clear stance, I can understand more. But when you're kind of like all over the map, I don't know. So I'm not a big fan. And he was the Charlottesville person, and then at the University of Florida just the other day, the same thing happened. What I'm going to propose to you guys is that it's very important that we, again, know what the freedom of speech is, understand that as soon as we start regulating freedom of speech, we are on the road to fascism. And that's what politically correct is really put in place to do. And all of this hypertension, racist stuff, you know, yes, there is racist stuff. There are people that are heinously killed and trials that are heinously unfair. But to scream, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist, for the stupidest thing, like, you know, like, I've been called racist against my own race. I've never even been called racist against a black person. Well, no, I take that back. In college, but he was not correct. And he was, I forget why he was so angry at me. There was something that happened, and I don't know. But anyway, confusion. But I didn't do anything, actually. It's just that I was the only white girl in the whole dormitory. So he like called me a white devil or whatever. But I had friends, and they all protected me and whatnot. But it really hurt my feelings. Poor little white girl. I like went and cried in my room. Like I was so, and it was great because I got to experience what that must feel like to be like hated on just because of the color of your skin. It was like a huge wake up call. In fact, before I really started studying like what was going on race wise in our country, I really got the dose experientially myself, which is always the best way. Anyway, nothing bad ever happened between him and I. Other than that, it was bad enough. But I didn't retaliate. I did kind of retaliate, but that's a story for another time. But it was a harmless retaliation, but it did make him upset. But I also do believe in sticking up for yourself. I don't necessarily believe that what I did was the most mature, but life goes on. So, sorry to digress. So the point is that if all this stuff is being organized around these specific people who, so far, another one that they have really pinned up against is this dude Milo, who is Jewish and gay, and they say he is alt-right, but apparently he's not. Like, he doesn't consider himself that. I don't know. I guess he's conservative. There's a lot of people that consider themselves conservatives, and I think that meaning more, and it's all confused because I think some people, when they say conservative, they're talking about fiscal conservative, like we should have more produced here and not be outsourcing and I agree with that part of conservatism. I don't think globalization and making everywhere like the USA is I think it's a horrible idea. I think it's failed already around the world and made conditions worse for groups of people. So, so I'm saying just consider the freedom of speech, bring it into your conversations. When people talk about Charlottesville, this awful riot, just be careful who they're pinning blame on. Are they pinning blame on the person coming to exercise free speech and getting beat up by alt-left with tiki torches? It's pretty freaking crazy. So just to end us here, I'm going to just show you what the Berkley riots. I was looking for UF riots yesterday, but the video quality was poor.
Today I want to talk about the left and Berkeley. But I want to remind everybody that I lean neither left nor right. I believe in right and wrong, and I think both sides need to be called out when they are acting inappropriately or just downright insanely. And I think that's what we have here at Berkeley University.
I think we should classify them as a gang. They come dressed in uniforms, they have weapons, they're almost a militia.
Our news crews found that most of the conservative demonstrators in the park yesterday were Trump supporters who repeatedly denounced Nazis and racists.
I am against the white supremacy.
You see, it seems like people can't go and speak their minds there and have the freedom of speech that we are all allotted without some kind of a violent protest breaking out or the event being canceled altogether. Of course, I'm talking about the likes of Ben Shapiro and Milo Yiannopoulos. And again, let me say, I don't agree with them all the time either. I think some of their points are very valid, and I think that they present them well and should have a forum to do so. My point is that groups like Antifa are quick to go to these events, yet when there are more important issues to protest, they remain silent. Case in point, in the beginning of September, left-leaning publication HuffingtonPost.com published an article that painted the president as anti-science. But to the rescue came Jeffrey Epstein, convicted pedophile, to give hundreds of millions of dollars to scientific research. And they pointed out that Harvard University is getting some of this money. Yet where are the people protesting at Harvard? Now, Epstein has his own foundation that has funded research into HIV, cancer, artificial intelligence, and beyond, and has even worked with people like Stephen Hawking. Now, folks, I don't know about you, but I feel like that is something worth protesting, that accredited universities are taking millions upon millions upon millions of dollars from convicted sex offenders. It's outrageous, and it's not the first time that this has happened. Back in 2012, it was a very unreported story, but there were rumblings that the Penn State case with Sandusky was really a child trafficking ring for people who were donating to his Second Mile Foundation and Penn State University itself.
I hear there's a rumor that there will be a more shocking development from the Second Mile Foundation. And hold on to your stomachs, boys, this is gross. I'll use the only language I can. That Jerry Sandusky and Second Mile were pimping out young boys to rich donors.
Okay.
It was being investigated by two prominent columnists, even as I speak.
Wow.
As the school administration grapples with an explosive email sent this week charging Prep's late football coach Phil Foglietta, who spent 25 years in his post until the early 90s, was tied to a child prostitution ring once utilized by disgraced Penn State defensive coordinator Jerry Sandusky. The email was written by 48-year-old Greg Bucciaroni of Philadelphia, who told the Daily News he was a child prostitute when he met Foglietta through Jerry Sandusky at a 1979 State College event for Sandusky's charity, The Second Mile.
And it was published in Radar Online that witnesses saw billionaire donors molesting young boys with Sandusky on private jets. Yet this has never really come to light in the mainstream media, and we know now that his son is also a convicted pedophile. So obviously there was more than one person doing this, folks, yet the left remains silent. I think it's time that all of us start picking and choosing our battles based on relevant information and issues, and stop chiming to one side or the other and whatever is being hyped in the media and on television. As always, if you like this video, please subscribe and go to wearechange.org. Make that donation. It's only through your financial support that reports like this one are possible.
So that's about a wrap. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for thinking and considering and spending time on this really, I believe, very important issue. And there's just so much bombardment in the media that, I mean, anytime I try to turn it on to just see what they're telling people, it's like I can't even take it, because I've already studied the truth, and it's like, no, and even with the Harvey Weinstein thing, it's like there's so much more that he's guilty of. If everybody was really coming clean, the whole pedophilia ring would be completely exposed. They're all guilty of still covering that up. And an important part of raising our vibration and our awareness level so that we aren't susceptible to this anymore is not falling for the bait of the flying monkeys and the people who want to suddenly wear a victim hat when they didn't look like a victim. And the left wants to then paint a picture that, but all women are victims. No, there's a lot of women out there that know damn well what they're doing, and they are not victims. And you can't be that high up in Hollywood and not know what the hell is going on. It's just, you have to play the game to even get there. So, yeah, I wish everyone much clarity, much truth, much insight, and please leave comments, questions, Also, I will be on Sunday, not sure what time yet, but check back for Tea for Thought, which is my weekly half an hour chat about how we can strengthen our community and strengthen our individual selves, and usually kind of trying to pertain to whatever could be a relevant matter at hand, depending on what's going on, but more energetic, philosophy and practices that we can utilize to help us through the rest of this crazy year. So I hope you have a great Friday night, and I'll see you Sunday. And please do subscribe to the channel. And if you found this video valuable, please do share. Much love. Ciao.